Hi, this is Patrick with Ghost Travelers Podcast. On this episode, we're going to be talking with Dean McMurry, also known as the military medium and host of Red, White, and You. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, Dean, welcome to Ghost Travelers Podcast. I appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks, guys, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So what have you been doing lately to keep busy from the last time that we saw you at the convention?
I know, it seems like it's been forever. Been busy in a lot of different projects, from film to just recently kicking off on Memorial Day, kicking off the Red, White, and You show. So it's a brand new radio show that I'm hosting on a local FM channel. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, I did catch that show and it was pretty good.
Oh, perfect. Thanks for listening.
So, Dean, now tell us how you got into the paranormal.
Sure. Well, a little bit about me. Of course, as you guys know, as I was a 24-year Army veteran, so 14 and a half years with the regular Army, then the last 10 remaining was with the active duty Army National Guard here in the great state of North Dakota. However, the last, I would say, 4 years of that service, when I came back from my last overseas tour, that's when all this paranormal activity started happening. And prior to that, I was not open to, talking about things about the paranormal or believing in psychics or talking about EVPs or different things like that, because I wasn't in that frame of mind. And so I was what I would call very, very skeptical. And but when I started having my own experiences, such as clocks and pictures and everything started flying off the wall, and I really honestly, it scared the bejesus right out of me.
Sure,
and I just wanted answers, because at that point, it's easier to face down an enemy insurgent or something that's very logical in nature versus something of the paranormal realm, right? It's like, because it's something so completely outside of the box that I was used to. And so I really went on a quest or a journey, whatever you want to call it, to figure out what that was. But around that time, my grandmother came to visit me, and I always joke and say, a lot of people don't think that their grandmother is, visiting is a bad thing. But my grandmother died when I was about 10 years old. And, she quite literally pushed me into the mattress. It was something where, it was so visceral for me that I, couldn't deny what I was experiencing. And, it was so, every time my mind would go back to that logical, trying to make logic of it, right? And saying, well, maybe it wasn't real, or, trying to look at other things and try to disprove them. It was almost like my grandmother was still with me going, do you remember that evening that, I had that experience? And, going back to that and saying, absolutely. And saying, how about you just stay open to what you're experiencing, or what you're, this experience that you're having. And every time I would do that, it would completely blow me away. I would have these, and as I went on in my journey to figure things out and what being a medium meant for Dean McMurray, it was completely, life altering. I'll just call it like that, because really my plan, I was in my last 3 years of military service. Before I retired, my plan was to work for the local VA in my area. And my kids at the time, they're still very young. And, I was like, I'm looking at that career type deal. And I did not think that I would be working as a psychic medium full time. I would have never fathomed myself doing this work, the the way that I am now. So yeah, it's been really not only humbling, but awe-inspiring. So it's very interesting.
So, Dean, how old were you when your grandmother visited you again?
So I was about, I want to say I was about 42. And when she, 42, 43, when I'd have to go look back at journals. But, so I was early 40s. So I'm 49 now, so.
No, you're still young. So how do you think that came about, that I don't want to say all of a sudden, it turned on, or all of a sudden you were really aware now of possibly, an ability that you have? I mean, why do you think that happened right there?
Right. That's a great question, because I've often asked myself that, over and over again. Why not? Why me? Why now? And, one of the things that I came to understand was, number one was as you get older in life, you really get through a lot of what I call the BS, right? Yeah. And you get a lot, you're kind of, as you get older, you're all the, I want to call them maybe the materialistic and the less important things in life. You're focusing in on what matters, and really getting to the heart of things. And at that time too is my son had my now 8-year-old was a newborn at this time. And so it was kind of the starting of the end. So because we only have the 2 kids, and so I think there was a lot of things that aligned themselves why I was having that experience at that time. And it, so it's more kind of that maturity aspect as well, saying, because if it would have happened in my 30s, or especially in my 20s, I don't think I would have been in the frame of mind, number one, to be like, hey, let's explore this, or, because of, if it wasn't for my wife, I certainly wouldn't have pursued this life. I certainly would have, I would have just kind of blew it off or hit it or something. And really it was after the urging of my wife, because, the spirits were continuously bugging the kids as far as being sensitive to that. And the old adage of, when mama's not happy, nobody's happy, saying, she quite honestly said, you need to get this figured out because it's not going away. And I didn't know what this was, but I knew that it was something spiritually, obviously having this visitation from my grandmother, and then coming to find out that I was a medium. And, it was like, wow. So it's been kind of the wild ride, but, and as I go back, they always say hindsight is 20/20. As I reflect back, even in the years and the moments in my past that I said that I was, quote unquote, not open to, spirituality or my intuition or whatever, there are moments that I, realize now that I was very much in tune, because I believe that we all are, whether we're acknowledging it or not. But I was very much connected to, spirits and my intuition. In fact, I brought up going through old journals when I was deployed in Afghanistan. And actually there was a story about when we were on patrol at night, and where we had stopped in an area that we were not supposed to stop. And the guys were getting out to relieve themselves and take a little stretch break. And there was a voice inside me that basically said, you need to move the vehicles up another 500 meters. And it was almost, like this urging. And, and of course at that time I'm thinking, because it's my knowledge as a leader, as a soldier, that it's telling me this is not good. This, And, so a lot, anybody in their given field gets that, I call it saltiness, or the seasoned individual. And, but the thing is that, there was someone or something speaking within me saying to tell me hey, you need to move the vehicles up another 500 meters. And quite honestly, we had some technology with us that kept us safe that night, that kept the IED from detonating. But we audibly hear, to this day, there are several of us that were on that patrol that night that still will say that we heard the audible actuating of IED. Wow. And if it wasn't for some of the electronic capabilities that we had, even back then, that was way early 2000s, was that we probably wouldn't be here today. But I go back to, where did that voice come from? I get the technology piece, but where did that voice come from? What was that? And so even though maybe I wasn't all in touch with what I call the woo-woo, it's like, was that my higher self? Was that spirit? Was that a spirit guide? And I guess my biggest thing is that, do I have an absolute answer for that? No. But I know somebody was looking out for my highest good. So, it was kind of have my six at the same time. So it's like, so it's kind of, so it's always interesting when you go back and look, why certain things happened or what happened in certain circumstances.
Yeah, you definitely can't go back and question that. I mean, that's
right.
You never know how it would have turned out. But so you're coming towards your end of your military career. You're now having these experiences. Who did you turn to? To develop this ability you probably have had for some time. I mean, who do you turn to, or did you turn to anybody at all?
Well, I did, like I was saying, that when I got back from my last overseas deployment, I had that paranormal experience. And my wife had confided in me when I was overseas that she had a local psychic from our area over to the house to have it doused and all that. And I was like, what? And I jokingly referred to this lady as a Voodoo Chick. That was my joke. It was just a term that I used very loosely because I was in that frame of mind. And I said, whatever helps you sleep, and so when I got home and all this crazy stuff started happening, right away my first words were, get a hold of Voodoo Chick, right? And have this lady come over. I want everything to stop. And but it didn't stop. But so she was the first point of reference for me because I didn't know anybody. And of course there was books. You could go, I read a lot of great books by James Van Prague and others. Everybody has a book. And so I was reading a lot, and obviously the internet has gazillion amounts of information. But when I reached back out to this lady, she was like, quite honestly, well, it's because you're a medium and you're not using your gifts. And I said, well, I don't want to be a medium. I didn't ask to be a medium. It's not something like I put in an application and, hey, congratulations, you're now a medium. And it's like, no, I didn't go looking for it. Hey, that would be cool. How about, I don't have that t-shirt yet. No, I didn't want it. But she said, you don't get a choice. And I was like, oh, great. And so now I was left with the, dilemma of what do I do with it, and saying, what does that mean? And at this point I had been reading and I was like, well, I see through all these books and everything I'm watching and seeing of what it means for everybody else, but I want to understand what it means for Dean McMurry to be a medium. And so, long story short, that's really the journey I started on. I started taking a few courses with the local psychic, and starting to get a baseline understanding. She made a few suggestions of a book to read, and and kind of giving me some threads, I call them, to follow. And I went on a journey of I did find a teacher in mediumship. I took a course in that. I took a course in dowsing. My wife and I both took the course together. So a lot of doors started opening, and really when I committed myself, saying, well, it's not going away. It's like waking up with an extra thumb, right? It's like, oh my God, what is this? But it's not going away. It's like either I figure out what this means, or I don't know what. And so I chose to embrace it and really figure it out. And that's kind of what I did. Instead of running away from it or denying it, I kind of embraced it and saying, well, let's figure out what it means for Dean McMurry to be a medium. And that's really the beginning of the beginning, because I think with anybody, once you accept who you are at any level, it's not just spirituality, right? Once we accept who we are, then comes the journey of understanding, who we are at a deeper level, and saying, okay, who am I with this now? And it's like, what's that going to look like? And really, that's a never-ending book, because it evolves from day to day. It started, I joked early on. I said, what, am I going to be giving readings in the basement of her home? And quite literally, I did early on. It was kind of funny, and it starts with family and friends. And next thing you know, my phone started ringing, and it was people that I didn't know. And I was still very much in that last 3 years of the military service, right? Yeah. So Monday through Friday, 1 week in a month, I was working very much for the military, and I was very guarded. I supervised about 4 people, and it was the water cooler talk, right? And it was like, hey, I got some crazy stuff going on, and so we would talk about it, but that was it. When the commanders and other folks would come into the conversation, I wouldn't bring it up. Never got brought up until the very end, because my mindset at that moment was people outside of, that I don't really know so well will judge me, and I don't want to be judged in my last little bit of military service. Yeah. But, the thing that I come to find out is, regardless of what you do, you could dig ditches, you can clean toilets, you can serve the country in any capacity. A job is a job, and people are people. And some people I found are very open to, obviously, the paranormal, spirituality, whatever. And then there are some people that aren't. And quite honestly, when I started the conversation with some of my commanders and senior enlisted and other folks, some of them quite honestly walked away. And some of them would slap me on the back and go, no way, and started up a huge conversation and pulled things out of them, because now I was willing to, quote unquote, step out of the metaphysical closet, as I call it, and step into my being, my own, really my true self, and saying, this is who I am. And there was a lot of people that, hey, now Dean's stepping out and saying that he's doing this and he's wearing a uniform. Look at him. He's okay. And saying, so I made it safe, in a sense, for some people to discuss this in that format. So you think of it, a lot of people say, well, do sexuality and spirituality, saying in a sense, it holds the same energy, even though it's completely separate, but at the same time, it's the same energy or frequency, because it's still emotional, right? Because you're worried what somebody else is going to think of you. Yeah. And so when I did that, because I was very close to retiring, I was like, by that time, and I was like, what are they going to do, bend my dog tags and make me retire, right? I got kind of grumpy towards the end, and I said, the heck with it, I don't care who knows, and I don't care, and in that sense, and I just kind of, hey, this is who I am. And really, that's when truly the military medium was born. As I transitioned more, and I just knew that I was going to be doing this full time. And it's kind of crazy because not only like where I met you guys at Paracon, whether it's other events with casinos or private galleries or wherever the work takes me or what might come up, whether it's with film or anything, I just stay open to it and kind of, every day it's kind of, how can I serve today? Is it Dean the Medium? Is it going to be Military Medium Dean? Is it radio show host Dean? Is it Dean the Dad, Dean the Husband? We all own labels, but what's going to work today? So it's always interesting.
Well, yeah, you're never defined by one role. I've learned that.
Right. We're so much more than a label.
Now, so for some of us who have never visited a medium, what is that like? An individual comes up to you, they're interested in a reading. How do you prepare yourself for that to be able to do it? What's it like, buddy?
Well, the whole process, it's a great question because a lot of people actually ask me that, saying, what is the process? What's it like? And, and this is what I tell folks is like a session with me, if you're lucky enough, because a lot of dynamics has changed within my personal life and family life as the kids have gotten older, that I don't do face-to-face readings in my home anymore. However, the thing that, when I do one-on-one readings, or even if I'm doing a video just like this through Skype or Zoom, I tell people it's just like two friends sitting down to have a conversation, but one of them is listening to the voices in their head, Yeah. And, but, the process for me to get ready, if you will, quote unquote, get in the zone or whatever you want to call it. When I first started, it was much more involved where I would go through a whole visualization with the client about bringing in light and, protection and all this. And part of me over the years, of course, obviously readings evolve with the medium. And I kind of started thinking, saying, why am I doing this all the time? It's really taking away from the clients, not that it lasted a half an hour, but, if there's 10 minutes, we're just idle chat, saying that's 10 minutes of their time that the client has paid for. And, my thought is they're asking for a service. They want a reading and saying, why take it up with, protection? So I kind of made an agreement, I will call it, with a long-standing agreement, and I'll call it my rules of engagement with my spirit guides and my helpers and my archangels that I work with. Basically, my rules of engagement simply state that I kind of told them, you guys know way before Dean McMurray knows when I'm giving a reading. They know when Sally Jones is going to contact Dean McMurray saying, or go on my website or whatever and schedule a reading, right? And saying, why can't you guys preempt that by saying, okay, there's a bubble of protection around that. So if I'm needed, my services are needed sometime today, that you're going to be with me when I engage or when I need you. You're going to be there. I don't have to go through. And it's just like having the gear that you need to, or the crew with you all the time, instead of going, I am now channeling the energy. You can do that. I'm not making fun by any means of anybody that does that, because I think intention and visualization is very powerful. But what I'm saying is my readings have evolved to the point where prior, I just know, and I have the long-standing rules of engagement of saying, if somebody all of a sudden saying we're doing a reading right now, because sometimes it happens during maybe a radio interview or whatever the case, saying, hey, would you do a radio, or we got a caller on the line or whatever, and saying, ooh, you got to give me 30 seconds so I can. No, it's just boom. And then, so basically that's the energy protection piece. Number two is the connection, because when I retired, it was, well, prior to retirement, I was almost doing two gears, right? Yeah. The work life, and you can't really shut it down, but I was kind of tuning it out and saying, all right, I need to work now. I'm at work, and towards the end, I got more and more spirits that were showing up at work, but at the end, I just kind of took the filter right off and saying, hey, whenever you show up, that's okay, but I do set some boundaries with spirit. But saying, hey, I'm very open to, all of a sudden tuning in. So that's the thing, is like, it doesn't take a long process. Now, some people will say, but Dean, I have seen you take like a piece of paper and start scribbling. And yes, sometimes I will get information so quickly, it's easier for me to get a pen and pencil and start writing the notes or drawing a diagram or whatever I'm being shown. And because sometimes it's scattered, and it's easier for me to put it on paper. And that way, too, if the person is with me physically, the client, then I can give them some notes. But in addition to that, what they can also do is, I also can email that, or however I so choose. So a couple different ways, and obviously I'm, do readings over the phone as well. And then the other thing is email, and basically the format of that is everything that I'm speaking, I am writing down, saying, hey, I have a mother, or, a female on the mom's side of the family. I understand she passed approximately the age of 75, and that's how I go. I just start off, is it male or female? Is it, can I get height? And so it's just like looking at you guys today. How would I describe you to somebody else? Yeah. And just from head to foot. And now I will say that sometimes things are by vibration. So as far as somebody's height or weight or age, I do it by feel, saying they feel like they were, so some people, we know the energy they displace around us, meaning, when, each of you walk in the room probably just by the vibe, right? Yeah. And saying, hey, could you grab me this or grab me that? And so the thing is understand the same way is I try to tune it in and seeing, checking their age. Now, sometimes I do see a number associated with their passing. However, sometimes they're older, they feel older because of, I'll just say, like cancer or something like that, right? But they might have been 60. They might have been in their 60s, but they feel like they're 80. Those things. Or maybe they act way younger. You have people that are well into their 70s, 80s, but act like they're 40. They're full of spunk and vigor right up until the time that they pass. So sometimes it's kind of variance, and you try to put those as a medium, at least for me, you try to put all these different senses and sight, sounds, and all this into words, and saying, well, how do you describe, and sometimes it can be challenging because sometimes you're trying to describe something that you have never experienced before. It can be a challenging thing because if you see a color that is so much more vivid than anything that's known here on Earth, our known Earth, it's like, how do I describe to you a color that you've never seen? And so, you try to get as close, saying, take a violet that's, so bright, but take it 1,000,000 times more, and saying, I even almost smell some, whether it's, so it's always interesting when you start trying to put all these different senses into equated words. And I tell my students usually I should really call it more, instead of a course in mediumship, or really a course in how to be an interpreter. Because you think about it, right? We're taking a different language as mediums or psychics, intuitives, right? And I'll call it a new universal language, and we're putting it into our known language and saying, it's interesting because you get people from all walks of life, all over the world. And if you have an old grandma that came from Poland, which I had in a reading, and she starts jabbering and points a finger in your face and starts jabbering in Polish, you may not know Polish. However, it seems that the way that as long as you're listening deep enough, it's the energy transcends the language barrier. And so, it's always interesting. And it's like, oh, that's what you mean. Okay, well, it's always interesting to me. So, but it's the same with, our senses, our sixth sense, but, the clair abilities. And so, whether I'm tasting grandma's pies or whatever and saying, if grandpa liked peanut brittle or whatever the case is, and, or the smokers or the drinkers or all that crazy stuff. So,
Dean, have you ever had the opportunity to work with a paranormal team to do investigations?
Yeah, I've had limited experience, but I have had experiences. We did a joint investigation. At this point, it's only been one joint investigation in the western part of the state. And it actually just worked out because there was a client that reached out to me. There was a spirit that was touching and, as she called it, being attacked. And so I thought, God, this would be a great opportunity to bring in a friend and colleague and out in that area of the state. And we both did a joint investigation. And I knew right away that it wasn't anything evil or demonic. I tapped in prior. However, I knew there was some, and I knew it would make very good investigation, and we could get them a lot of help. So have I done some? Absolutely. It's interesting to me because I don't want to really call it investigation when I do it, because if I go to a home, I'm not investigating. It's really not any investigation on my part, but I might be just getting, number one, clarification of exactly what they want or who they are. And number two, 9 times out of 10, a homeowner wants it gone. They just want it to stop. And what I'm finding more and more of, which is very interesting, is more and more people need to awaken spiritually or step into their awareness, or their loved ones are trying to get through to them, and it's maybe a very urgent matter that they're trying to get a message through to them, and that's why they're clanking the pans and being very persistent. What a lot of people saying, I got a haunting, oh my God. And it's like, you got some noisy ghosts, but you don't have but is that always the case? Absolutely not. And maybe but as far as when I do my initial screening, when I'm talking to a client, I'm already tuning into their, saying, what's your address, and whether it's here or Seattle or wherever, and tuning in. And because I do a lot of dousings and cleansings, either remotely or, I have done some in person, and some really nasty ones. So it's always interesting. You never know what you're going to find.
Now, Dean, you bring up something very interesting on cleansings. How do you go about cleansing a home? How do you get a spirit to move on, or at least?
Well, this is a great topic, because the reason I love talking about it is because a lot of people have misconceptions about cleansings. They feel, or at least they've been told, that you have to have special training or whatever. And And they feel, at least a lot of people feel, that they have to have so and so come out. And I just love empowering folks, saying, no, everybody has the ability to do cleansings, and it doesn't take a whole, what I call a big hoopla, a big to do. Now sometimes you'll get some stuff that's like a very 0.5% of the time where they're very nasty or whatever. That's a very low percentage, where you might need somebody that has more experience and are able to help in different means, right?
Yeah.
But as far as going about it, there's a lot of different ways. Number one is really common, a Native American way, obviously, is sage. If somebody gets there's different types of sage bundles, but you get them at your metaphysical stores or online. Usually comes in abalone, but sage. I personally, we've done it before, and I do have sage here in the home. I don't like the smell of it. It stinks. And to me personally, I'm like, why use something in my home that I don't like? A thing that I do like to use, Palo Santos wood, or some call holy wood. Looks like little kindling firewood. You get a little baggie of wood, and basically the same premise. I love it because it has that earthy, I call it kind of a spicy scent, right? It has an earthy scent to it. And then the other two other things that I like to use. One, you can use just an incense that you really enjoy the scent of, or maybe a resin. Or also another thing that I like is everybody's into essential oils nowadays. And if you have and I say this I want to be very clear on this, a high frequency oil. Now there's different types of oils, about a bazillion different types of companies, but a high frequency oil is what would be known probably in the oil market as a very pure oil, not a BS oil, not something you just diffuse for the smell, something that would be medicinal grade or very close, right?
Yeah.
And so meaning that it has a very high frequency to it. But what I simply do, 3-4 drops in a spray bottle, right? I've even seen some people use those big schoolhouse spray bottles, right, for whiteboards.
Yeah.
Like you could really hose down a room, and where you can spray it in a big fan, but then fill it up with water and you shake it up, and basically you're a big diffuser. And and some people, quite honestly, doing it as a professional, doing it for clients, you got to take into account a lot of different things. Do they live in an apartment? Are they allowed to smoke, or can you have smoke? Or is the client or their family, will that set off allergies? So you got to think about a lot of things. So that's where the essential oil and water comes in really nice, because you're just basically water mist, right? A scented water, but when you're doing it, obviously, you can, I have in the past of saying, hey, spreading the light and love of God, into these different, maybe a dark area or whatever, or just, intentionally in my head saying I'm raising the vibration, or I'm removing the dark energy, or whatever it is. Now, that is one way I've done a cleansing. So talk about the sage, the essential oils. The other process too is what I call the old school way of dowsing. And what that is, and I don't have them here because I'm in a different place other than my downstairs office, but I have L rods, and where we locate and shift what I'll call energy anomalies or vortexes within the home, and realign that. So you think of a chiropractic adjustment for your home. And then also you can use the L rods to locate spirits that are kind of wandering around, right? And saying, oh, there's one. And do I go chasing them? Absolutely not, because 99.9% of all spirits are very, they're just hanging out, and it's kind of like sometimes you get those, what I call a vortex that opens, and it's kind of like a bus station in your basement, and all of a sudden you get, all these different, random spirits, and it's nothing bad. It's just they pop up, and it's like, oh, hey, I'll just hang out here for a while, and then, until their bus comes again, in a sense. But at the same time is saying, you get them to very easily cross over, but the ones that are very, and how I do that, I basically invoke Archangel Michael, again, my crew. So I think, go back to what I was talking about, my rules of engagement, of saying, I work a lot with archangels, so I bring them in and saying, hey, can you guys take care of these, folks, and help those cross over, that need to cross over, and they do so. And then if you find the very small percentage that is being very nasty, and they're being like the toddler on a sugar high, right? Yeah. And you got to chase them around, and it's like, get that out of your mouth. It's, so the thing is that, and I work really heavily when we're doing that with, archangels and such, and, and usually what I find is those types of spirits love to attach themselves to individuals or things vibrating higher than them. So they're looking for an energy source of some type to almost, sustain themselves. And you think of just a very low density, saying, think of the moth to light bulb type deal. So then you're usually dealing with a client that has an attachment, or what a lot of people call is, sometimes an exorcism, or whatever the case is. But it's interesting. A quick story is with talking about crossing over, is back in my early years of development, the premise was for me is that I'd always go back to my urban combat training, right? And this is what the vision that I would have. And as far as I would be the lead guy in this urban combat scenario in a stack going into a room, and where we just kick in a door, and it was me and all the archangels, and be like, all right, everybody that's earthbound or stuck, you get to the light. It's basically, you bust the door in, you kind of tag and beg everybody, and you're just getting everybody out. But I had an experience, this is quite a while back, several years back, and it was in a dream, and it was so absolutely vivid. It was so real. Spirit gave me a dream of where I actually died, and I woke up inside the coffin, and I was freaking out. Yeah, I would too, yeah. I was like, oh my God. And the first inclination is to pound, and it flew open. And I wasn't, I was kind of in the back room. They hadn't brought me out yet. And I got out, and of course the military was there, and I was kind of looking, and I was like, wow, it's actually a nice turnout. And I was like commenting on my own funeral. But then I had two hard-nosed military guys, and right away they were in my face, and they were like, McMurray, what are you doing out of the coffin? You're supposed to be dead. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I'm not. And they were like, you know how many people you're going to disappoint? And I didn't catch the pun or the humanity and the funniness of it until later. And they were like, here, look at the paper. And there was something about how I died, and nice write-up. And I was like, and they were like, your family's out there and everything. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, okay. And I'll get back in the coffin. Just don't bury me. And then of course, and it was talking about, and of course I came out of the dream and everything, but the premise of it was the confusion, because I was so confused of saying, how can I be dead, but yet I'm alive? And I went on to read, which is so interesting, because I read a book right after that called Through Angel's Eyes, talking about the Monroe Institute and everything that still does training and stuff about out-of-body experiences, but talking about how this one individual went on to do soul retrievals, right, and help people that are earthbound cross over, and talking about how some of these individuals die so suddenly or in such a violent way that they don't realize that they're dead. And so, that their physical body, they might have been shot, they might have drowned, whatever, and it was so instant, or they were such in state of mind of survival that they don't realize that they expired. And now their soul is still in that state that they went just before they crossed over. And they have to, this gentleman in the book talks about how he has to convince these souls that they truly are crossed over, and they are, their body did die. And so where they have to show them their, the reenactment of here's when you were shot, or here's the automobile accident, or when you were drowned. And I was like, and part of me was like, holy crap, when you have one of those epiphany moments. And I was like, I can't be the stormtrooper mentality, because when I go in a scenario, I don't know what's going on with that spirit, right? Unless I start having a conversation prior. And so now my process is a little bit different. So I really kind of feel, are they earthbound or are they not? Am I just talking to this individual, or are we going to just open another doorway in a sense for them to leave? Or do we need to get them to cross over? And now it's more of a conversation with them, even if they are crossed over, saying, no, you need to come with me, and I got some great folks, instead of saying, get your butt to the light, and, Archangel Michael, let's go. And, it kind of throw him in the back of the car, and away he goes. Because you have the soul that is so confused sometimes that they don't know what's going on. And until you have that personal experience of, oh my God, I was so scared and I was confused, and how can I be dead? But yet I'm standing here talking with you guys, but my family's there, my body's there, and how can this be? And saying, yeah, and so there was a confusion aspect. And so I really had a new empathy for those souls that not only were earthbound, but so it took on my work took on a whole new level and understanding and meaning for those. And it's interesting because I think sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and it's and then sometimes you have an experience and you just, that epiphany moment, and it's just like, holy crap, this opened just a whole new understanding of, what's out there. And so, yeah, it's always interesting to me, when you go down that road.
So, Dean, now you've been doing this a while. I can't imagine how many different spirits you've communicated with. Could you give me some kind of insight on what you believe through your experience what the afterlife is?
Absolutely. Well, here's a synopsis, basically a boiled down version of what Dean believes. And, I know this is different for each and every medium and and all that. And I want to preface this by saying, as I know this will come up, or somebody listening at a later date will be asking, I was raised in a very, very Protestant household. Very traditional beliefs, very Christian, all that great stuff. And Mom made us go to Sunday school every Sunday, all the big holidays, all that stuff. Very traditional. But yet there was something within me that knew that I wasn't quite a fit for traditional religion. Even at an early age, I still remember this. Going forward, my belief is that hell and heaven are states of mind or states of being. That, of course, when we talk about spirits and we talk about dimensional planes or existence, we're bridging that plane of existence. And the thing is that what I've experienced thus far, and my belief is that when we talk about heaven, it is a little bit different for each and every spirit that I connect to. And so whether it was, Grandpa Joe, and he loved to fish, he would love to fish all the time. Now, he's doing that. Or maybe it was little Johnny, and he loved his ice cream. Now he's sitting in front of endless bowls of ice cream. And so the thing is that, is it always the case of, are you in the utopia of land in never-ending ice creams? Is that a personal experience? I believe because we are, when we get outside of our 3D existence, it is truly that. It is a user-created existence. And when we connect back to that spiritual dimension of what we understand what is heaven, it truly is that. It is what we want to experience and what we believe. And the other aspect of hell, the same aspect. It's really, a lot of people say hell, it's anything that's void of God. I would really say take it one further, and that it is void of everything. The scariest parts that I have ever visited is not like some, and I've had some very interesting encounters, but I would say is going into an absolute murky, blackness. I know that sounds repetitive, but at the same time where you cannot see anything. And the thing is that you don't know where anything is, and it's void of everything. So it's void of life, it's void of light, it's there's nothing else around. And if you think of where you can hear your own breath, when you put on headphones or something, in a sense, that was my experience. And I have heard some people physically say that, before they passed, actually, we had this scenario with my mother-in-law before she passed, where there was a part of her that really didn't feel worthy to go to heaven because, a lot of people that are very staunch religious believers saying, who am I and what did I do to, believe that I can go to the kingdom of, in heaven and spend eternity with God, or whatever your belief is, that utopia. And saying, but at the same time, I believe that we transition back to energy, that we exist in a universal, call it maybe a matrix or a state of being. And whatever that state of being is for you, if that's in a beautiful utopia, with endless love and states of acceptance and support, or whether it's on the vice versa, and within that, what people would call a hell, right? And but I believe that when we connect to what a lot of us understand as heaven, I believe that, and what I've experienced is an absolute, pure, unadulterated frequency of love that will absolutely, I've never connected to anything that even rivals the energy of it, where literally the tears just run. And you're not sad, you're not happy. It's just, you're just crying. And it's just like, I don't even know why I'm crying. You're not happy, you're not sad. It's love. And it's just like, this is just crazy in it. But it's cool because you feel so supported inside and out. And so that's my belief in a nutshell. I know it, for some, it can get so much more complicated, and there's so many religions out there. But in a nutshell, that's Dean's belief of what the afterlife is. And, part of me kind of thinks that when we, transition from this life and go back to spirit, we're going to be like, crap, I had it wrong again. It's like, so we try to get as best we can our concept, how our human minds can conceptualize it, because we have to take what we feel and see and sense, and we have to put it into words. And I think really a lot of times, and what I feel is that the human language fails to adequately describe what there truly is in existence.
Do you think
all
of us have the opportunity when we pass to be met by a spirit guide or someone or something that will help us transition, at least try to get us on the right path where you don't go, put yourself in the dark side?
Oh, absolutely. I believe that each and every one of us, because we don't go through this life empty, right? We've had parents at some level, or somebody that played in a parental role or whatever, I believe, or even if you didn't, then, spirit guides, other folks, angels. I am a firm believer, and I've had this confirmed in my own, reality as far as, yes, when you cross over, that in a sense of what we conceptualize as somebody there reaching out and saying welcome home or whatever, kind of like that reunion, right? Yeah. And kind of welcoming that spirit back. And so instead of wandering. So, but I kind of also have a belief too that the spirit has a few choices when they cross. Obviously, number one, that they can choose to stay earthbound if they so choose, because they have an attachment to a home or unfinished business or something like that. Number two, the other aspect is saying, sometimes when they're dealing with suicide, that, maybe they didn't get all the healing that they needed to in this lifetime, in this world. And when they cross over, even though, their soul was kind of hurting, so they cross over into what we understand as heaven, but kind of stop off in a healing area, if you will, and allow the divine entities or angels to work with their soul energy to, heal what they needed to before they continue in their evolution, we'll call it. And then the other aspect that I believe is then you think of the normal transition when just, saying, hey, I'm going to heaven, and, you kind of go and do your thing and connect up with your, loved ones and the rest of everybody else. And, but a lot of people have misconceptions about, oh my God, they took their own life, they're going to end up in hell. And I just cringe when I hear that, because my heart feels so heavy for the family, and saying, oh my God, that individual took their life, or oh my God, they were so much of a drug user or alcohol, and saying they're not going to heaven, and saying that's not the case. It's really up to the soul. It's not like where's your ticket? Oh, you had a bad life. You're not, nope, you didn't earn your way into heaven, son or ma'am. It's not the judgment aspect. And I really believe that the judgment is here on earth. It's really the judgment aspect. So, but that's my belief anyways.
No, I like it. I like it a lot. You brought up that you mentioned in passing about teaching. Now, that brings up a really good question. Is somebody born with the skill, or is it something they can develop, or is it something that we all have the ability and they can, work with somebody like yourself to develop it?
Well, I believe it exists on so many different levels, but first I want to preface this by saying that it's my belief that we're all healers, we're all mediums, we're all psychics, we all have this ability. And if you come from, if you're brought up in a traditional Christian household and we're taught by the Bible or the beliefs of it, and saying there's passage in there and saying, we were made in the image of God, right? And saying, if we had a pinprick of, God's ability or God's energy, why wouldn't we be able to connect to what I call the divine internet, right? And so the internet, the heavenly internet is always running all around us. And why can't we tap into that? Every one of us, and have a communication both ways, or feel on what's going on, or intuitively know. And so my belief is that we all have this ability. However, I will caveat that by saying that some of us have abilities that lie closer to the surface than others. So, for example, say PJ, maybe for you, is being maybe your clairaudience skills are closer to the surface than maybe somebody else and maybe it's very natural for you just to go, pick up on it, just so natural, like you were born like that, right? Or, or maybe, like for me, like I just stumbled into mediumship. I wasn't looking for it. So for whatever reason, it was closer to the surface for me, and I also use another analogy in like tennis. And you think of Andre Agassi, right? World-class tennis player. And I don't know his history, but, I'm going to assume that he was at a very young age, probably started playing tennis, and it came very naturally for him, but he continued all throughout his life and became very good at it. And so could I be the next Andre Agassi, at almost 50? I suppose I could if I really wanted it bad enough and I trained hard enough. So the thing that I would say is that, even if you don't feel that you're the gifted medium, or saying, because I've heard a lot of people say, Dean, I don't have your abilities. And I always say, yes, you do. But, they're going to believe what they want to believe. But at the same time is, if somebody puts in the time and practices their gift, that and flexes their intuition, because you got to exercise it to get it stronger, then it will get better, and you will get better at it. It's the same way if you guys ran right down to your local gym and took a Pilates class. One Pilates class is not going to do you any good. It's going to make you sore is what it's going to make you. But you got to continually go, right? You got to go to classes. You got to show up every day. You got to train. Whatever your goal is, you got to continually do it if you want to be better at it. And that's true with mediumship. It's the same with psychic development, intuition. You got to hone your abilities, and because you're learning a new language, and you got to learn how the universe is going to communicate with you, and you got to put in the work. Mediumship is not a overnight bang boom bing. I always say in the beginning of my classes, saying for mediumships, and if you're expecting me or an overnight sensation type deal, you've come to the wrong class. And usually it runs typically for most, like maybe a 4-week course, but saying in 4 weeks, you're not going to be, oh my God, all of a sudden another James Van Praagh. You have to go on and hone your ability. Take a little bit, learn enough to get started on your own, make it your own, and then go do it. It's like, how do you get better at anything? It's like you do it. You guys do paranormal investigation. How do you get good at doing it? You do more investigations. How do you become a better driver? You go drive. So go do whatever it is you do. And, and if you want to be the best at it, then you continually hone and refine your abilities and stay open to that. Take new classes. Go with I always say, go with where your heart is guiding you. So I believe that's where your intuition lies, not this. This is your monkey mind. If you stay heart-centered, then you're saying, where do you feel guided? What do you feel guided to do? And if it's take a class in this, great. In fact, sometimes it could be things that might not even seem related to the paranormal or spiritual aspect, but maybe it's something that feeds your soul. So, but that's kind of my take on it, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And what would you recommend to somebody if they, let's pick any state. Let's say they live in rural Minnesota. How do they go about, taking a class or finding a mentor? Is this, with today's technology, can you do it online? Or like you were talking earlier, how you can do some readings, by Skype.
Yep. So, well, and of course, it's a great point you bring that up, is because we do live in a global world right now today's technology. We're speaking across country, but so can you take online classes? Absolutely. You can take them from everybody from me to James Van Praagh does online classes. There's so much information. Maybe your area, but usually one of my first stops I always tell folks is reading. Reading is the most number one readily available resource, and it's the cheapest, guys. You know, a lot of people say, oh my God, don't give away the secrets, but I'm all about empowering folks and saying, here's the deal. Read with a level of discernment right here. So what you're reading, especially on the internet, right? It's got to be true if it's been on the internet. So you got to discern a little bit, take it with a grain of salt, but if it feels good to you, then continue in that path. But there are so many teachers out there. There are so many courses. If you live in a rural community that may be saying, Dean, I live in a town of 20. We don't have a library. It takes me, we'll just say, an hour to get somewhere. I only go to town maybe once a week or what, if you live in one of those communities, then obviously maybe you do have internet, maybe not. I don't know. If you're watching this, obviously you have some form of internet or listening to something. But the thing that I would share is that, try to get, maybe you have a friend that has a book, or if you go to a library, go to a Barnes and Noble, whatever. Start with books, or go look there's great videos out there too, right? YouTube, you can watch umpteen hours of, Facebook Lives, YouTubes, good Lord, how many more, Vimeo, how many more video platforms are there out there nowadays, right? And talking about not only paranormal, but talking about spiritual development and energy forecasts and whatever floats your boat in Dean's language, go after that. If it's tarot, go in that entrance. Find out first what kind of holds, saying, I've always been interested in tarot, or I've always been interested in medical intuitives. I heard something about it, sounds fascinating. Go after that and find out who does that and kind of follow them, see what they're doing. Do you resonate with them? Do they teach? What, do they recommend books? Have they written a book? So kind of just play with the energy and see what's out there, because there is so much information now. It's really a shame if somebody goes kind of in the dark, so to speak. And even in communities halfway around the world, I mean, for God's sake, if we're connecting to clients in Singapore or the UK or whatever on, across the ocean, I mean, there's no reason why somebody can't connect with some level of information. It's so plentiful. So,
all right, Dean.
Oh, so one last thing I wanted. Also do a search. There might be a metaphysical bookshop or crystal shop in your area, and they're a great hub for also, healers, other psychics, mediums. That's a great informational hub as well. So that was one last plug. So look for those in your area.
Dean, you kind of hinted earlier in the introduction that, the things that you've been doing to stay busy. You did mention film.
Yep.
What about film? Tell me about it.
So, I'll share what I can, because we're still under contract. But one of the things that last fall sometime, I was contacted about from a production company out in California about that I fit the box model of what they were looking for. And wondering if I was under contract for anything. And I said, no, not at this time. And so we started, long story short, we started talking, and they came out and did some filming. And nothing has gone to market yet. However, and we are talking about some other concept models and different things, and the wheels. It's a whole completely different world for me, because now you open the door to the entertainment industry, right? And it's completely different. And I'm still learning a lot of that stuff, but the wheels move so incredibly slow. And there's so many things that I don't even still understand. But what the cool piece is that I didn't really even understand the universe was really working some big level stuff, right? And how it really opened up some opportunities for me because, around January, February, I was on a social media platform and I saw that an actor was he didn't advertise, he shared a post saying that an actress and producer was looking for vendors for her pre-Oscar gifting suite that support the military, and looking for vendors. And I thought, if that doesn't scream military medium, I don't know what does. And I was like kind of frantic. I was like, how do I get a hold of somebody? And there's like no way that these, what I'm thinking Hollywood socialites are going to contact little old me in Fargo, North Dakota. And I reached out to this actor who I sent a friend request and a message to, and I thought, he'll be whatever, and delete it or block it or whatever he does. And within minutes, I get a response and saying, hey, Dean, hey, thanks for the interest and all this great stuff. And here is Suzanne's information, and here's her Gmail and all this. And I was like, wow, I was blown away. Yeah. And so we started chatting, and next thing you know, I find out that he's a huge baseball fan. He loves Roger Maris, and of course, Fargo, for those of you that don't know, is the Roger Maris Museum, and where he is buried. And it's actually was on his bucket list. And so I just kind of put that feather back in the back of my hat because it was just a little 5-minute conversation. And I moved on to, working with this late Suzanne De Laurentiis and her project. And we sent out, good Lord, hundreds of, I think it was it 250, gift certificates for readings that they gave, part of the swag bags that went out in this pre-Oscar gifting suite. And so that kind of led to other things and working with folks. And kind of interesting when this whole radio station thing kicked off and my radio show, I was looking for guests, and I was like, hey, I see at the end of June there is the 36th annual Roger Maris Celebrity Golf Tournament here in Fargo. Hey, I know a guy that works in LA that loves Roger Maris, and maybe he would love to call in on the radio and be a part of this, because it's something that is local and, national. And also this guy's grandpa was one of the first people on Normandy on D-Day and was interviewed and all this great stuff. This before his passing. Long story short, it turned out it started with a conversation about calling in, and by the time we were done, it turned out that he flew in, or that he was going to fly in for the golf tournament. And actually, this afternoon, that's why I was like, hey, can we do 2:00? Because I picked him up from the airport, him and his son from the airport. So tomorrow afternoon he tees off at the 36th annual. So his name is, and it's not a secret, it's Dominic Pace. So he's done a lot of, like NCIS and, Desperate Housewives and everything. So he has a lot of credits to his name and everything. So it's he's a really great guy. So and we're excited to have him in the area. But it's interesting how one thing leads to another, and it was just a simple conversation. But how would I have known that, going, from the awareness of this production company in LA, and they weren't even connected, right? But I believe that they were energetically. That because when you start having awareness of course, a lot of us in the Midwest are thinking Hollywood, right? California. But at the same time, it's like, I didn't know this guy. I didn't know him from Adam. He didn't know me. And it just popped up on my feed mysteriously. And it's like, why would that be? I wasn't following him. I wasn't I wasn't following this other lady, and it was because I trust these are those serendipitous moments that the universe is like, slapping us around. Psh, psh, hey, like I always say, hey, idiot, wake up. It's like, here's your opportunity. And that's what I was actually frantic, looking for a way to contact them. And, and it's just like, it wasn't, hey, I should contact this guy. It was like, I have to.
Yeah.
Like, I was trying to find every way I could to contact somebody, him or this lady, or Suzanne, to be a part of this. And I was like, I feel that deeply that I need to be part of this. And where this leads, I don't know, but I know that, it has led to, friendship with Dominic. And then also Suzanne was one of the first guests that I had call in on the radio show. So she was actually part of the first show. And because, and obviously my show focuses on veterans and different stuff for veterans. And she actually started a program. One of our foundations is to train veterans in the entertainment industry, how to work cameras and mics. And because back when she was young, the Vietnam War was going on, and she saw this need. People were coming back from the war, and in the California area, and she was like, well, and she was a very young actress at the time, and she's like, I need to start this so when they come back, it's a way to cope. And it's went on to become this big, taking on its own life. And that's really where I just allow it. I don't try to guide it, with all of this. When we talk about film and the entertainment stuff, I don't know where that's going. I really don't. Will you see Dean McMurray on TV? Maybe. I don't know. I don't, do I have that foresight? Sometimes I can feel it, but, whether it's maybe a conversation that maybe they're having, I don't know that. And sometimes, as a psychic and a medium, sometimes you're too emotionally close to things. And I just try to stay open to that and saying, am I holding the vision of something really positive to come out of it and to bring a level of awareness on the next level? Absolutely. But at the same time, I'm just open to whatever comes forward. And I'm really grateful for each and every experience. So,
well, you got to love it when a plan comes together. And
it is. It's beautiful just to be a part of the process and watch it, right?
Yeah. And if film doesn't come by, it doesn't really matter because you're making a difference for where you're at right now, and I've appreciated our friendship, getting to know you, and I think you're the real deal. If I had to, point to somebody who I thought was a true medium or a psychic, you'd be the first name I'd bring up.
Oh, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And I just want to say I appreciate your friendship as well. It's always interesting. It's always interesting. One of my old mentors always said that, it was his belief that in every lifetime we have a core circle of about 500 people that circulate within our life, the people that come and go. And it's interesting. I know that when we started chatting, it was just like, like we had talked to each other like old buddies, right? And we just kind of hit it off. And it was so interesting because we didn't know each other from Adam. And it was just so interesting kind of being kitty corner from each other at the Paracon. And so I appreciate your friendship as well. And likewise, it's for both of you, really. And, getting to know you guys and really follow your work as well. And I think it's so neat that you're doing the podcast and everything. I think that's just bringing a whole new level to things, and it just feels it just feels right.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, before we let you go, if somebody was interested to get to know you a little bit better or what you're doing, how would they go about doing that?
Well, you can do it a few different ways. Obviously, you can go to Facebook, the Military Medium, or you can jump over to my website at deanmcmurray.com or themilitarymedium.com, and it's got all kinds of stuff, my bio, readings, all that, or tabs for, and I got a couple different things. I'll talk about them really quick. One is Off the Radar. So it's a series that I'm going to bring back, but it's live readings right on the air. So and then we go live with those. So you can sign up for a chance to get a free reading on that. And also then the radio show. And then that's another way that also has its own Facebook page, the Red, White, and You radio show, or you can click on the tab and you can read all about the show as well on my website. And there's even a listen live button, or I also do Facebook Lives. You can watch a show, you can listen to the show, you can listen later with all the, because a lot of times too, if somebody's calling on Facebook Live, obviously you can't hear the callers. Because it's actually live in the studio. But when we get the audio cleaned up, then we post that as well on the website, so you can hear the whole show in its entirety. So
nice. Well, Dean, I want to say thank you for your military service, and thank you for continuing to serve the veteran community. It's nice to see that you're making a difference with the veterans, and thank you. And I wish you nothing but success, with the radio show and keeping yourself open and see what the future possibilities are out there for you. I would like to thank our guests for spending some of their time today with Ghost Travelers Podcast. If you would like to share an encounter with the paranormal, email us at ghosttravelerspodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's ghosttravelerspodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Ghost Travelers Podcast. You can also follow our paranormal investigations on Facebook at Ghost Travelers. There you'll find information on future and past investigations, along with a link to YouTube to view our investigation video episodes. Again, that is Ghost Travelers on Facebook. I would also like to thank Grant Wilson for allowing us to use his music for our episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a positive rating on your podcast platform. Until next time, this has been your host, Patrick, from Ghost Travelers Podcast.